Housing Authority for September 21, 2023. To order, we have roll call and we've got a quorum. So we'll move on to item C, and that is approval of the agenda for today's meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll motion that.
A motion, and the second. Are there any additions or corrections? Nope. Hearing none. All in favor of approval of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item D, approval of the minutes from the June 22, 2023 meeting of the Green Bay Housing Authority. That was in your packet. Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I'll motion that.
I'll second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to regular business. Consideration with possible action on approval of the formation of a Wisconsin limited liability company to be named Housing Authority Management Member LLC, the sole member of which would be GBHA. I believe that'd be GBHA Properties, or is it just GBHA? For the purpose of acting as GBHA's entity in the managing member of the Green Bay Housing Authority Properties LLC.
We are in the thick of it now with closing on our RAD project. So I have Attorney Dombrowski here who's working on this with us. And Paul, if you would like to maybe explain the need for this, these next two agenda items are regarding our project, our conversion rehab scattered site Mason Manor project. So Paul, if you could explain the purpose of this agenda item.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks for kind of reading that in. It's I know it is a little confusing, but basically we would be forming a new entity, this Housing Authority Managing Member entity, and the sole member is the Housing Authority. So it's not like creating a separate board or separate set of people that need to govern it. It's really going to be sort of a alter ego, if you will, of the Green Bay Housing Authority. So it's not going to add a lot of extra, administration type work for you guys. What it does is it creates kind of a buffer entity, which is good for a couple different reasons as part of this RAD conversion. If you recall, sort of the structure starting at the top, if you will, we have the new LLC that's being created that will actually own the properties as a ground lease tenant, and that's the one that we're doing the tax credit project with, and we'll have a tax credit investor come in. And then underneath that, there is what's called a managing member LLC. And that's the organization that kind of controls the day-to-day operations of the property owning LLC. And that managing member, if you recall from kind of structure discussions, that will be with a Gorman entity, our developer on this project, and with a Green Bay Housing Authority entity. And instead of just having GBHA enter into that managing member arrangement with the Gorman entity, it makes sense to create sort of a buffer LLC. It makes the tax credit investor more comfortable, and it also kind of helps us in the fact that with regard to the arrangement as between us and Gorman in the operation of the managing member, it gives us an LLC sort of layer of protection, but it's really driven by it's very common for the tax credit investor to want to see what's called a blocker LLC or a buffer LLC in this spot. So really, it's creating that entity. The sole member is GBHA, so it really operates as GBHA, and it's really just to make this whole structure work.
To be honest, it kind of had me at alter ego. Oh, we get like a cape. Do we get a cape?
Do you? What was that? Do you get what?
He wants to know if he can get a cape as an alter ego.
Oh, a cape. Yes. Well, not a bad idea.
Forget we recorded all of these. Paul, at some point in the process, so that we can keep ourselves in line with all these entities and make sure the public understands as well, could we sort of get a chart graph
Sure.
sort of thing that does what, where, and when, and what it's all made up of? So
Yeah.
that, I mean, we could maybe even put that on our website if possible, so that other people who are looking into that can kind of see where all these entities sort of plug into each other.
Sure. Yeah, we can get an org chart sent over.
Yeah. Like a huge graphic. And maybe with that chart, just sort of a sidebar explanation of this entity does this, this entity does that.
Okay, you bet.
I feel like that's actually one of the things that we're required to provide, right? Under the checklist for our closing docs.
Yes, we will definitely need to, we'll have an org chart out there, and it'll really just be kind of adding some notations to it so that people understand who's doing what. But I think that is a really good idea for all of us, just to have not only the org chart, but to be able to look at it and remember when we're talking about different entities, what their roles are.
Is that something we can put on the website or something? So on anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
see why not. I mean, right?
Okay, great. All right, so we need any other questions for Paul?
We need to come all along with
Right.
the system.
Mhm.
Make a motion for the formation of a limited liability company named Housing Authority Managing Member LLC.
And I will second that. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to item number 2. Following along with this, consideration with possible action to adopt an operating agreement for the Housing Authority Managing Member LLC, substantially in the form attached to the agenda. That was in our packet. I didn't have any questions. Anybody else have any questions about it?
And Paul, if you just want to explain that agreement as well.
Sure. Yeah, tried to keep it pretty simple and straightforward, especially since GBHA is the sole member. So it really just kind of passes that. It's really just a document that kind of memorializes GBHA as the sole member, and you typically use an operating agreement when you formed a new LLC. So it's pretty short and simple, since there's only one party to it, and kind of part of the corporate formalities of forming the new entity.
Especially our bylaws.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much akin to bylaws in a corporation.
Anybody have any specific questions on the document? Otherwise, I will make a motion to approve the proposed operating agreement for the Housing Authority Managing Member LLC.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to thank Paul for your insight and information on all this.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
You bet. I'll plan on signing off now unless you need
Yep.
me.
Nope.
Okay. All right. Take care, everybody. Go Packers.
All right, item number 3, consideration with possible action to consider the Gateway Collective's formal request for the Housing Authority of the City of Green Bay to consider an initial resolution relating to conduit housing revenue bond financing for a housing project located at 700 Adams Street in the City of Green Bay.
Yeah.
Cheryl, we'll start with
Yep,
you.
so we were contacted, actually Linda Templin is on the line here. The Gateway Collective Group it's a new housing project downtown, and they're basically asking us as the housing authority to issue revenue bonds to assist in this project. We've done previous with Ohio University Village Housing, our
Mhm.
campus for the creation of housing. So that is certainly something that we do as a housing authority, this type of revenue bond. So I've asked, representatives from the Gateway Collective Group to come here and just kind of give us like what their project is. So the housing authority knows what the plan is and what they want to do. So if you want to open the floor.
I'll make a motion to open the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of opening the floor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
You guys want to come on up?
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
And before we jump into it, I will just, call out that it's 301 North Avenue Street on the agenda, not 700.
And maybe just for the record, state.
My name is Alexia Wood. I am the executive director with Gateway Collective.
Paul Belcher with Base Companies.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sounds great. So I see we definitely provided the meat of your packet for today. So thank you guys for graciously taking the time to look through what we sent over in advance. That being said, I certainly won't look to repeat it. I'm really available for questions. I will just at a high level say the heart and intention behind social inclusive housing is to bring 72 units of mixed use multifamily that is really targeting workforce in our community, workforce of various income levels. But our desire is to provide affordable housing that brings workers to where the jobs are, with the belief that we can impact economic development by strengthening the downtown businesses. Our small business owners who can't afford to pay employees more, if we can supplement that with affordable housing for that workforce, they will be able to then attract, recruit, and retain a really strong workforce. With that, a lot more of the material, certainly between the PowerPoint, building plans, and the renders that were provided. The one other thing I will simply call out, because I certainly know my face at times can be familiar in this community, given my long history with St. John's, is St. John's has hired a new executive director. I am solely moving over to Gateway Collective. Certainly this work came out of my years of providing homeless response for people facing housing instability and homelessness. In no way is this project that. And I would say instead, to summarize, is, through our shelters, but also through our daytime resource center programs, we found people on the brink of homelessness or facing housing instability. And we just kind of felt, we kept catching people as they fell off the cliff and hoped that we could walk that. And so I went back to school to get my doctorate, about five and a half years ago now, thinking that I was going to be researching and studying access to care. That if we as a network of shelters and programs could get people into our shelter programs, we could walk that path out. And instead, you see some of the research scattered throughout, but what we started to realize is we needed to get upstream and actually turn the needle on stabilizing individuals and families who are living paycheck to paycheck, those ALICE households through United Way, and support them as a family unit before it's housing instability, before it's homelessness. And so I know the one-page fact sheet really calls that out. I also know that has been our greatest educational challenge, is to help people understand this is not low-income housing, this is not transitional living, but instead it is making sure there's access to affordable housing for our workforce, for our service industry, for some of those critical positions you see on that slide, so that serving those families, serving those 5-year-olds today will prevent us from serving them as 25-year-olds in need of shelter services. With that, Paul's the developer on the project. Linda represents the bond council for the bond financing. I'm certainly available to speak to social inclusive housing and the programming piece of it. And so I would just open it up to any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions?
So are you still 30-40-30 materials?
Our mix is 30-40-30. Yep. So 30% of tenants would be looking to serve lower income workers. And so again, individuals who are working, but that individuals, the slides in there, I believe it's individuals earning up to $17 an hour. A family of 4 earning up to, I believe it's $24 an hour. Again, the slides in there. 40% kind of the target being workforce. So individuals who are between 60% and 120% of the area median income. And then the remaining 30% being market rate, still at a competitive rate, compared to what's available downtown.
There we go.
But the model is really built to move families through those stages and help families become self-sufficient. And to be able to do so in a way that they stay in their unit, because every single unit is built out the same market rate finishes. And that we can then support them in climbing kind of through those ranks socioeconomically. And that then when a new unit would become available to balance out the scales again, our goal would be that, you know, we're pulling another lower income working family so that they could also climb through those ranks, but 30, 40, 30.
And I think that's a great mix. I think when we talk about just housing in general, it's pretty hard. It's hard to use because the market doesn't make that. Can you talk about the supporting services?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I would say that's where both the doctoral research and the 11 years at St. John's really come into play. Is we are, I refer to my time with St. John's and within the housing network in town. We are really resource rich at serving families, providing case management, doing a lot of that. Again, for people who are struggling or facing housing instability, homelessness. So if you bring that upstream to provide those same services. And so one of the pieces we are probably the most excited about is a built-in resident investment program. And so 10% of what a tenant pays in rent, we will be taking off their rent and placing it into a savings account for their future financial needs. And so as long as they are paying rent and being a good neighbor, instead of building a line that assumes you're consistently going to have quote unquote damages to units or lost rent, instead of asking tenants to all contribute to what perhaps one tenant, you know, may take advantage of or have damages or whatever in the future, you ask that tenant, that household to cover that. And for the ones that are rising up to the bar that's been set, you reward them by gifting that entire resident investment program savings account back to them at the end of their lease when they choose to lease. And so they can use that for a down payment on a home, for sending kids to school, for purchasing a reliable vehicle, whatever the goal may be. But again, but there, it's everybody except market rate. So the 70%. And so they may still feel like they're living paycheck to paycheck. They may still feel like they're making sacrifices, but we're taking their financial capital and saving for their financial goals. We have a full-time community resource advocate on site. And so that individual will be there similar to a case manager, but just connecting people to resources, talking to people about job growth and getting their resumes ready and interviewing and where would they like to go. We are also, that community resource advocate is very intentional about building partnerships with other community agencies and services that can provide resources and support. And so we've been building a partnership with the YMCA to attend to physical health. We've been working with a few of the local banks and credit unions on financial literacy, having financial advisors on site that are available to be tenants of the building. And so looking at financial health, looking at emotional and physical and mental health through working with the local healthcare systems and looking at what classes could they offer on site or what can they provide. That's not income driven. It's not limited to individuals who are at a certain income level. It's really just about enriching the community of tenants and addressing every single aspect and component of health within the housing model and making it really easy for individuals and families to engage with services and move forward at engaging and chasing their goals. We then are working with a strong partnership with Spoon Lake Church. And through some of these partnerships, we are able to look at addressing the after school needs of kids. And so kids who are in families where families are struggling financially, where they're paying their rent, but every single month is a struggle, is it impacts graduation rates, it impacts math and reading scores. And so by being able to offer after school tutoring programs to those kids, we are both addressing childcare needs of school-aged kids, so mom and dad can continue to retain their employment, but we're also making sure in a supportive environment that kids are at grade level and doing really well in school. We are working on, it's not finalized yet, but we are actively working on addressing the second shift and weekend childcare needs. And so we know if we are bringing workers where the jobs are downtown, the service industry, whether it's hotels or food service, they need to be able to work those shifts that include evenings and weekends. And so making sure that there are supportive services for the childcare component of that built into the model as well. We also have a partnership built with Hy-Vee. that Hy-Vee will be delivering groceries every week. That is across every single tenant of the building. So they can place their order, and those groceries will get delivered, and delivered to each door. And so now at this point, we're working with Hy-Vee to say, could we build, a system where other downtown, if you're working downtown or you're in one of the other housing units and you just want to get your groceries delivered because it's not as accessible, with the grocery stores in the downtown area, to expand that to be able to serve the greater community as well. And so,
And I'd love to have maybe that well.
so we've tried, we haven't tried Hy-Vee, we've tried Hy-Vee, but we certainly met with grocery stores just to say, you know, with the commercial piece we have, could we look at a corner market? And it's that challenge between, there's not enough foot traffic downtown right now, to drive that. And yet, how do you generate foot traffic if you don't have some of those basic amenities that everybody downtown is looking for? And so we believe the small pieces we can do to impact change in those areas, so by bringing 72 units of housing downtown, over half of those units being 3-bedroom, 2-bath, so targeting families. We are bringing the workers to where the jobs are, but we're also bringing customers to the downtown area to generate business at some of those downtown businesses as well.
Sandy's not here, so I'll ask. What is the accessibility component to these units?
You're talking ADA accessibility?
Yes.
So we are, whatever code was for the fully ADA accessible, I believe it was, is it 2.4 or 3.4, we rounded up on those. We went back through and said, one of our target groups, when we're looking at Alice households, is to say, we are really trying to target aging adults. We know that's the fastest growing cost burden demographic in the Green Bay area. And so we took another 29 units and made sure that bathrooms are fully accessible, with the walk-in showers, with the shower seat, with the grab bars, with the ability to roll a wheelchair in under the sink. And that extends into some ADA. There's a code for it where it's not this code, but it's the code where they are definitely ADA friendly, and accessible at 29 additional units beyond the code of what was required.
I would have liked to have a discussion with you morning. Right, so these were from
The fully accessible is per code, and what we do, I believe it is for. And then we've added an additional 29 that have ADA accommodation.
So like there's what universal design and then there's. Right. Okay. Yeah, okay.
It's, the Bay Lake City Center is a 12 unit condo association with multiple private owners. And so the multifamily is specifically the second floor. So that's the 6 condo units on the second floor. The first floor then has an additional 6 condo units. We would be purchasing one of those condo units, the former Coco space, and having a commercial partner in that space. It includes builders and builders, and absorbing that lease. And then there are 2 other owners within the condo association. So Stephen Church owns 3 condo units, and then a private investor leases up to the agency owns the remaining 2. We have 2 passenger elevators. We also have a freight elevator with a loading dock, which any of us who have been college students in an apartment or have moved college students in know that freight elevator will certainly be a great resource for move-ins as well. So 2 passenger elevators. We don't want to.
Great.
So one of the big deals with this unit was the light, in the units. So, but I think that you've changed that design, right? So all of those interior units that didn't have like direct sun, have direct sun, is that
Correct. So I believe if you scroll up, I think it's up. So this is an interior unit design. And so, so I'll stop on this slide for 1 second and Paul can speak to the size of those windows right there.
Those windows are the same size as on Plaza Fox.
So there's 2,
Exterior windows.
So there's two of those.
Those go into a hallway that's 14 to 16 feet wide.
And so that hallway, is filled with skylights, and so that was there from the beginning. Which people have had questions about that, just in terms of natural light and how that all filters in. And so basically, it's as if we built, this is set up to be like a city street, and you're walking up to townhomes. But instead of just having it exposed in Wisconsin weather, we are essentially enclosing it with glass. And so it becomes skylights, but pouring that kind of natural light into these front doors, where you're walking up to essentially a front door, like you would a townhome. Then within these units, and if you scroll up, I believe it's one more slide. Yeah, so here, then we added in addition to that light coming in through those windows from the hallway. Then this is a 4-foot by 4-foot skylight that is over the lofted area, kind of that home office kitchen. That spreads the light. And so at one point we had talked about putting it directly in the bedroom. And the feedback we got was actually people don't necessarily want light over them while they sleep, but they want to have that access where they could open the bedroom door and have it for it. So that's, 4-foot. I mean, it's,
So you're using the bottom light off the hallway and the interior, all the interior apartments.
yep. And then on the exterior, we are adding windows to what you see on the exterior of the facade right now. So prior to these interior units, we had more than double the natural light coming into the second floor. And then we went through and added a 4-foot by 4-foot skylight or into each interior. And I will say, the borrowed light is, I won't say a new concept. I think it's newer for people in our part of the nation probably to really start to understand and know. And so Gensler Architects has been doing a nationwide movement to convert office space into housing. And so there's lots and lots of models. In those models, what's interesting is they're building it onto a mid-level floor of a high rise. And so borrowed light looks a lot different. They don't have the opportunity to add in skylights to the extent that we are. But we have done work with Newland, as they're looking at the adjacent parking lot. They've come up and spent time on our sites. We've gone down and visited their sites. And together they took us to view the Avenue, which is a housing development in Milwaukee where they repurposed the Grand Ave Mall. And those are they all market rate units, I believe, with borrowed light and skylights. And so correct, none in their hallways, they have them in their living space. And so you can even go online and kind of start to capture what that looks like in practice when people are using skylights to pour natural light in. And then they were the ones sharing that you actually, this is beyond kind of the programming piece, but they were explaining how with a skylight, you actually get more light in just because of how the sun rises and sets on the east side of the building, west side, that sort of thing.
I mean, it's been a lot of folks right now for a while. Thrilled with, it's idea of the introduction of the skylight coming here. So we think sending. That's why I asked, because I know she would want to know that answer. Curious on two statements, one about targeting workforce and one about targeting.
So, and it truly is
The
both.
working elders.
No offense to Joe. No.
So we are,
Now you see the bill.
so we are working with property
On the market
management.
rates.
And, who is gonna manage it? So we are down to our final, we're vetting between two right now. And so. But I don't think it's confidential. So we are vetting between Vantage Point and Blue Frog for property management. Beverly provides property management to the common spaces, the commercial spaces. And so we are working with the property management on exactly how to screen for, workforce housing. As we talked about the aging adults, and certainly we've read the, RDA housing study that came out in October of 2020. Certainly a lot of the work put out by United Way. And so what they're finding with aging adults is as they transition out of the workforce, either from full-time to part-time, full-time to retirement, that as they move to those fixed incomes, that the cost of living becomes unattainable. That perhaps they have their home paid off, but they can't afford maintenance or they can't afford property taxes. And so making that clear in terms of this is not low-income housing, this is not a project. We're individuals who are not motivated to be employed and working in this community. This is not the fit for that group. For aging adults, if they have spent their adult years working and are now entering into retirement, we would still qualify them as workforce housing, given the fact that they have had a history of contributing. And then you'd be able to set the affordable rate based off their retirement.
Which creates a problem if you're an older person in that house that you can't get out of because you can't, you're in a go.
Right,
So there are people that would sell,
yes.
which would create the market, which would help the families build on it. They can't sell because they don't have a place to go.
And I think I mentioned this before, we talked about it, and my real job is, I'm an attorney and I'm the village attorney for Pulaski.
Okay.
In fact, I've worked with Linda before on some of our bonding issues for the village of Pulaski, but, we've got a development out there that, Macaulay is putting in a subdivision. And they put in some smaller houses that were initially intended to be starter houses for people. They were all bought up by, before they were built, they were bought up by people my age looking to get out of the big house into a smaller house and still have a yard. Still have, you can still cut your grass and have a little garden in the back, but it's not the big house anymore. It's a small house. And most all of them, last night I heard, were, acquired by, elderly. They're selling the houses looking for a smaller place to get to.
And I think we'll just continue to see that as that boomer generation reaches retirement. The other thing I'll say with this is the social inclusive piece. There's an entire piece focused on connection and belonging and how do you build enriching neighborhoods. And so when you look at that aging adult population as well, if their adult children live out of state, it starts to become that balance between they want independence, but sons or daughters want to make sure they're safe and that someone's keeping an eye on them. And so you bring that culture of community here, where they can maintain their independence. They can do so in a cost-effective way, but they can also do it with the community built around them. The one other thing I'll share, certainly your work with housing projects in Pulaski, and I think every single housing project across every single income level is great because as we add to the inventory, people can stay in their income level and it frees people up and all of that. But what we found is certainly multifamily is business. There's money to be had. And yet so often, a developer will come to a community and build housing, which is great for tenants of that building. And in no way am I saying that's negative for our city. It's great for those tenants, but that revenue is going to that developer wherever that developer is. And so how we have built this cash flow model is saying, what about if we were to take the rent from our residents and our neighbors and we kept that in our community and we took care of Green Bay's housing needs. And so the cash flow of this model is set up and it very strongly shows that it's financially self-sustaining, that the housing can take care of itself and generate that revenue for maintenance and capital improvements and all of that over time. But then you can take the profits raised off of one side, you can reinvest it into the concept. And you can start to say, where are other neighborhoods where there is a disparity between the jobs and the people that are filling those jobs. And so we already have an employer who works with our Joseph project who's saying, what would it look like to start to explore bringing this into our neighborhood? Because we have a really difficult time retaining a strong workforce. And so the model is a scalable model where the profits proceeds can be reinvested and we can start to add affordable housing in different pockets of the neighborhood. And then over time, by adding to the affordable housing inventory, hopefully stabilize the cost of living throughout the city, whether or not a tenant's looking at socially inclusive housing.
Any other questions from anybody?
move taxes. I
Um,
only bring it up because on my other half, for the redevelopment authority, when we provide federal funding, home rule revenue, we require them to
This is Linda
me,
Temple.
does Linda want to comment? And then this what she found. Was there someone that wanted to comment?
This is Linda Templin.
There we go.
Linda.
There we go, Linda.
And I just wanted to comment on a couple things with respect to the resolution that you have. One is that we've used a not to exceed 12.15 million. However, when you look at the description of the project, those spaces that are used for retail would not be included in the bond. And we haven't gotten granular on, eligibility with respect to the cost of those spaces. So we use in an initial resolution, we use a large not to exceed amount that's sufficient to cover the costs of the project. We fully expect when we come back with a final resolution that the bond financed amount will be less than that. For purposes of the initial, we want to make sure it's big enough, but it's like a funnel. We refine it as we get closer to the closing. The company, the borrower has already made arrangements with the bank. This will be a bank purchase bond. Bank First National will be purchasing the bond and will be the lender. With respect to whatever portion is not eligible, if there is a need for other financing, the bank will do that with a conventional piece of financing. Finally, I would just comment that this is a first step. We always have to come back for a final resolution and a public hearing. But this first step is like a stake in the ground. It assures eligibility for the project to use this financing. And so it's not binding on the borrower or on the authority without further action, but it is an important first step under the federal tax code. So that's why we urge you to consider that you haven't put a final blessing on the project. You have time to work out, the details of any lure or whatever you're going to require. And we haven't drafted anything other than the initial packet.
You want someone to speak to?
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's
It
much.
sounds like it might be, we talk about later when you or something.
And we, correct, we are at the table, we are willing to continue to have dialogue and certainly are looking to partner.
Do it.
Um,
Everybody loves talking pilots.
I
Payment,
will say,
payment and lieu of taxes for everyone that doesn't work.
yep, I will say, we met with the city, a few times leading up to a meeting in December of 2021, where we outlined, various ways we felt that we could partner together on this project. One of our, it was like A through H, I believe. One of those points was to, look at a pilot agreement for this project. We received a letter of support from Neil regarding social inclusive housing in the downtown area. But nothing ever came of the rest of the, areas that we had brought forward as potential areas for partnership discussion. And so it's certainly something that we would continue to look at and consider. But it's not something that has gone forward since December 2020.
Yep. Yeah. Right, I bring it up as one.
It's multitasking for all of it.
Multitasking. But I think though, I'm very happy with, this guy. So I think we should, I'm in favor of this project and I think we should support it. And let me just say, because I've seen the research on the minutes, but I'm a motion person. And I've seen units that change function. When you won't be building involved. You're not knowing when you sell those off and now you have those interior units that you can sell space. That's here, just because I've seen it. So I'm happy at least that's structure.
Yes, I would say.
What you're doing is awesome. That's important.
I will say that was feedback we received from community members and city leaders. And so certainly, hopefully, that is just a sign of our desire to collaborate and partner. And we're open, as you look at the renders, you look at the presentation, if you have additional questions or additional thoughts, certainly feel free to reach out at any time.
It looked like great.
Yeah.
We're talking about parking. Couple of ordinances across, building and zoning code for this,
That was one of our very first meetings, and that was with the Pauls were on the call, whatever department the Pauls were, I'll think they'll start talking later.
Yeah.
And so that was one of,
both of them.
yeah, right on.
and that was one of the very first questions we looked to answer, is just to make sure that there was fun in downtown parking, to which they said there certainly was. And so there's a draft, a final draft of a parking agreement that we're waiting to sign.
You're right, because zoning ordinance.
Yeah, but like, it's worth them back and forth.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I will just on the topic of parking, because this was raised in one meeting we were in, was this question of parking in a parking garage and walking, which I think is a testament to how comfortable we've become in Green Bay. Because certainly when I lived in Milwaukee, that was not rare. But again, I would just highlight that loading dock, that, if a mom has groceries, she has the ability to pull right out from load stuff. And so certainly not, going to be carrying groceries from the parking garage.
Oh, she can get her food. About it, I like.
Fair enough. All right, any other questions from anybody? All right, and just I had talked with Cheryl about this because of the connection with St. John's, just in the spirit of full disclosure, I've made many contributions to St. John's over the years, so. And I will, there being no other questions here, I would, move to close the floor. All right, so we have a motion, a second to close the floor. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you
for what you do.
You're welcome, and thank you for your support of St. John's over the years.
So now, we are at the consideration of the initial resolution. And I will make the motion to approve that initial resolution.
I will second that.
We have a second. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to approve the initial resolution relating to conduit housing and revenue bond financing for the housing project located at 301 Adams Street, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Good work. Thank you, Linda. All right, moving on to our informal section of the agenda, GBHA bills. Stephanie, anything new and exciting? Or
Exciting for bills.
we don't want anything new or exciting.
Nothing new or exciting in that, just that we had canceled a bunch of meetings, so there's a bunch of them in there.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you had any questions, I'd be really happy to answer them, but really there's nothing new, exciting.
I think there were some appliances that were purchased.
And that's
Right, Jamie, wasn't there? I feel like we had some appliance.
some refrigerators, I think.
Okay.
But that's kind of standard. We do go through them every once in a while. So,
Right. Any questions on the GBHA bills? Hearing none, we'll move on to GBHA financial report.
okay, that was also in your packet. We have the regular financial report and then also the capital funds, CFP capital fund program report also in there. That's the only one that really has anything fun and exciting. We did get about $2,000 more to, we got $1,000 more in our 2021 CFP grant and another $1,000 added to our 2022 CFP grant. Not a lot, but you know, a bit help.
Anytime.
Um,
Put it on phone.
So right now,
I
no.
think I'm about to suggest that. Just kidding. Just-
So right now we have a little over 1.7 in CFP dollars standing out there, but most of that, actually all of that is going towards the development. So it's all spoken for.
Okay. Any questions for the GBHA financial report? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the Langen report, also in your.
Don't think there were any, I don't think Langen did any. There are no applications.
And we'll move on to the director's report.
All right, well, I want to just briefly go over with you, our executive summary for our housing study, which was brought up here. That's the Bible of everything. But I just wanted to go through quickly some of these things that were recommendations from the housing study, because I think you were looking.
Yep.
What are we doing?
Yes.
So the housing study told us that we needed to go 140 to 310 units per year. And those varied from rental, from low income to middle to high, all three of them, right? And so just looking at what we have under construction right now, we have the City East on Walnut, Bay City Love Center, University Avenue Festival. We have Garrett Bader's project on Broadway. Habitat is constructing 14 units. Jazz House is almost done. The Fort is under construction. Right, is the one that we can use. I'm trying to think what Randy Scanlon or Alder Scale, Alder Stonehenge, or Elevator
Oh,
Stonehenge.
yes. Yeah, on Broadway.
So, yeah, so that's of course been under construction, and we also have some tune-in, development on University Avenue, packing plant. So that's 556 units right now under construction.
Didn't the other one next to the one on Broadway? That's next to the
Broadway
shelter?
Lofts,
Yeah,
that one is, that's completed.
yeah, but that would have been done
Um,
after the study, right?
that'd be another 200
Yeah.
units, but it would be 756.
So we're 200 and some percent what they were looking.
But we're doing well again, so I guess it's, you see a lot of activity in it. Hey, really figure, it's going on all over.
Yeah.
356 of those units, we consider the four. With a tax credit of 6%. So I think we're doing pretty good for new construction. We also have some stuff on the horizon, they talked about a new land development next to this isn't counted in there, the 70 units. And then the old, Boston Store Park units, potential development that we're working, and also across the street where Boston's used to be is potential development, so those are in the works. So stuff's happening, so. Looking at some of the strategies that we went through under communication strategies, they talk about establishing a housing committee. We actually looked at that and said, we didn't want to create another committee to create a committee, but we actually have a lot of internal ones that we're working on. So we didn't create a new one. And then improving staff and developer communications and processes, particularly we want homeowners. So we actually send a planner now, a building inspector that actually goes to those building meetings. So there's more dialogue going on that way, which is good. And we also have a site plan coordinator now in-house that's trying to bring them in and channel them through the right places, because plans come into our department, but then they have to go to other departments as well. So we're trying to make that process better for developers. We want to make it easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for some initiatives, assist and grow neighborhood associations, we actually got ARPA dollars to hire a part-time 20-hour-a-week person to do just forming and reforming neighborhood association work. Retaining inventory of market signal properties, that's ongoing. We have that inventory, we've been using it to share that with developers. And then under regulation, we actually have a list of text amendments to code that we're considering.
Okay.
Some of them are included in here, either text amendments to our municipal code or our zoning code that might help assist creating housing. So amend the comprehensive plan. We're actually doing a new comprehensive plan. That's what we're doing. So examine waiving or reducing development fees. that's under consideration as one of our, as a high priority, as one of our text amendments. We're not doing that now, but it's on that list.
Say it again, please.
It was waiving or reducing development fees for on a case by case basis to encourage affordable housing. So if you're coming in with an affordable housing project, maybe we will we make that cheaper.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, that gap is not big enough. That's not a big enough gap to fill for a housing development, but that was a recommendation.
It's case by case, who actually makes that approval? The
Well,
council.
no, it would be like a, so right now it's a fee schedule that's set up and approved by council. And
Yeah.
had that approved, so we probably have to make a change to a fee schedule. And bring that to council, but that's on our list to take a look at. We're finding that when developers come forward with projects for 4,000, the gap is big. It's a big gap to fill, so yeah, I'll get to that, but permit fee is not gonna help. This one, we're not quite sure. They've got increased code enforcement for converted single family rentals. It says create a targeted rental inspection program in areas with large numbers of single family homes converted to rentals. I'm not quite sure what the point of that is. We encourage the creation of two family, you know, when there's there, when it's possible. It says create a targeted rental inspection program in areas with large number of single family homes converted to rentals. I don't know if that's just housing quality stock or,
Airbnb.
maybe.
This kind of year now.
So,
No, I do the tourism zone work for
okay.
Door County,
Mhm.
and Sturgeon Bay has that, so they get a permit, before they can get a permit to be a transient rental
Okay,
property owner, they have to be inspected and approved by the city first, to make sure that they meet all, you know, because some
short-term
of these,
rentals.
yeah, so some of these people are, you know, they're bringing in 25 people in a house.
Right.
You know, and you've
Right.
got noise and parking congestion and all those things, so they're looking at. You gotta get a permit that will tell you, you can't have 25 people in this house.
And I think with our short-term rentals, there is a component with the county having to get your permit to the county for rental purposes. That's something we're looking at. We don't have the staff right now to inspect like Airbnbs, VRBOs, whatever short-term rentals. But there's potential in our budget, our city budget this year, to add a position that we work on short rentals. And so permits and some other things. So that's a possibility. That definitely is a problem though. Our middle income properties are being snatched up by people who are buying them for Airbnb and
Yes.
short-term rentals.
Yep.
And so that's eliminating our middle market, which is frustrating. So,
I mean, everybody else is tightening up.
and everybody is right having issues. And I think we've got, there's certain things we can't do in the state of Wisconsin based on laws and. Yes. Right. So, reduce parking requirements for affordable housing. We actually reduced our parking requirements everywhere in the city. Review requirements for landscaping and building materials in the zoning code. So the city just passed a green infrastructure ordinance. So this one we're gonna have to talk about because there's a cost to add green infrastructure, which, you know, do we say we don't have to do that for affordable housing projects? You know, that's a dicey one. It would save developers money if they didn't have to do those types of green initiatives and stormwater types of things, but that's also not good for the cities.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So-
Conversation point, right?
Great
Culture.
conversation point.
Yeah.
Adopt policies that encourage accessory dwelling units. That's one of our high priorities in the text amendment. There used to be the ability to build a second house in your backyard, right? Those smaller homes. Then people shied away from that. They didn't like that, but now we're like, oh, I'd like to move mom in, but not totally in.
Sweet,
You
yeah.
know, and if there's a small house you put in the back, so we're looking at that for sure. Enable cottage courts through PUDs. Cottage courts is like a big lot. You have one driveway coming in with a number of houses in them, can already be done in Green Bay, so. Create a rural holding zoning district. That's kind of to stop sprawl, so one house on a big lot. I'm looking at doing text amendments, possibly to look at that and, you know, maybe, you know, you can't put one house on 10 acres, you make it smaller. So, you know, it basically makes you put more houses. Right, right. And then under the funding, create affordable housing trust fund, that's actually in the works. Community land trust, we're working with NeighborWorks, probably with the consultant involved, we're hoping to have that set up actually by the end of the year, so already working on that. Utilize tax increment financing for affordable housing initiatives. We use TIF, whenever it's eligible to be used in any development projects. TIF, tax increment financing, is it's a tool that municipalities can use to assist developers finance a project. So you have a project here and you draw a TIF boundary around this area. You look at all of the tax values in this area. And a separate board, joint review board, which is made up of all the taxing entities, right? Because your tax bill is the city, the county, the school district, and the WTC, those entities. All those entities have to agree, yes, Green Bay, you can pull all the taxes out from this little area. You're not going to give us any of ours. You're going to keep the city portion. And then we can use that to put in infrastructural or to make improvements or to incentivize the developer to use some of that money in environmental work done or help with the project. So we use TIF a lot in 24. So
The other thing about that too is you can use TIF dollars for up to, I think it's a half a mile along the perimeter.
yes, and we've done that. So, but there are certain things you can only, developer has to have a but for. If you can't just ask for it because it's there, you have to have a need. So, utilize this financing, with a 1-year extension. So what they say, these districts have a time limit. And it's maybe 24, 27 years, and then it's got to go back to the way it was. So everybody, all the entities get their money. So what the state has said is you can, let's say your district's done, you're 27, they say you can extend that district 1 more year, take all that money that you've been collecting and put them in pools for 40 years. We've done that. It's actually called TDA on tax. District Affordable Housing. So we've already done that. We had a little over $1 million in that fund. I think it's down to about 250 now, but so council's been supportive of doing that when the TIF's about to close. Keep it open another year, use that. Promote the use of federal and state low housing tax credits, LIHTC that's called. We do that. We do a lot of WIDA, for example, we'll do tax credits. We do a lot of that work with WIDA. We have a great relationship with them. Market opportunity zones, those areas are not used a whole lot anymore as they were 3 or 4 years ago. So we market them, but I don't think they're going. Increase the use of down payment assistance. WIDA offers programs that we share their information as well, but we've also created programs for down payment assistance. We funded with our home dollars, or we created them through our ARPA funding. Amend rental conversion program. So we had a program actually, I don't know, we haven't run it for probably at least 5 years, but we would take where there was a single family house that was cut into multiple units. You could get grant funding to convert that back to a single, right? And it was really meant for the ones that were done poorly, to create that back. We've stopped doing that program because we really need those units. So this really doesn't apply to us. We don't run that program anymore. And then just under partnerships, support Habitat, NeighborWorks. We work with them all the time. Like probably every RDA meeting I feel has a little NeighborWorks or Habitat project with them. Form working groups with major employers. We actually have, the chamber has set up a group of housing people that we meet regularly to talk about how to engage employers in creating housing. Part of our, they helped us create the Great Big Home down payment program through ARPA, which is an employer incentivized program. So,
Is there anything that's done in that as part of that with the school district? We have so many new teachers coming in that are, they have housing issues. I mean, they've got a steady employment and they've got a decent salary. Although my daughter would argue about that. But, housing is, because they're often in a position where they may not be able to make a commitment, long-term commitment for housing to go out and buy a house.
Right.
Because their young teachers are coming in, they may be moving on to a different area at some point. So that might be something to try to partner with to see. if-
That's a good idea. So the Great Being Home Program, the city actually serves as the employer for city employees. So if you're a city employee, you can participate in this program and we match.
Yeah.
For you. So, but that would actually be good if the district could do that. Because
Yeah.
we'd love to have teachers like live in the green. And then coordinating with UWGB and NWTC on their plan. I know that UWGB just completed their campus plan. And, you know, we've requested information from them. So some of the text amendments that I talked about that we were looking at, that we need to have more discussion on is just things like reducing the lot widths, the minimum lot widths, the setbacks, increase, the impervious surface, like how much concrete you can have on a lot. All those things would create the ability to do smaller lots, smaller houses. We're looking at regulations with regards to mobile home parks. You know, they've kind of got a bad rap, I think, and because we've got some parks that you had to eliminate on University and sort of things, but actually there's some nice mobile home parks. Is there a way to do those and maybe set them up in a way, because it's an affordable way to get into housing. It's people really like mobile homes. We're looking at, let's see, there's been a big push for the Green Bay Housing Authority, right, to create additional units. So we're going to have our fair clock units available to us. Once this project is closed out and completed, we're going to have a pool of, it's over 100, I think, fair clock units that we can build public housing with again. So we're encouraged to do that. As well as other, you know, as the housing authority, we can do a lot.
Yeah.
If only we had more money. Stephanie. More money.
Find us more money stuff.
Looking at building, you know, encouraging builders to build no basements. That's like a love or hate idea, right? Because you can build a house on slab, which of course saves a lot of cost depending on how that's done. Or if you're going to build a basement, to require an egress window. Because if you have that, you build it and you put the egress window in, maybe it's just a basement, that's something. Space. So, and then, allow on-street overnight parking, that's always come up, as the ability that you need less parking space on your site, park on the street. So those are some of the things that we're working on, so.
One that you brought up when we had the other folks here was, you know, we're bringing all this workers living in downtown area, and you brought up the thing about the grocery stores.
Right.
The services, anything that in any of that you talked about that we could do, or that could be done to maybe facilitate that, or is it sort of you build it and they will come type of thing? Or?
Well, it is really difficult. So we're still working with Ted Mack on Monroe. I'm not, you know, I don't know where that is. We're going to check in, hopefully take that to our REA meeting. Grocery stores are really difficult. There's not a margin, there's not a high margin for profit on them.
All right.
You know, that people are like, bring a Trader Joe's down. They won't even look at us based on the numbers that we have. You know, it really is a chicken and an egg situation here. We're trying to create.
You can't
more
buy
youth-
chickens or eggs.
You can't buy
without
chicken to
retail.
flop.
Yeah.
There is a little market that opened up, right, on Washington Street, that I think has a limited supply. Some food, right, but it's not, right, it's not like your grocery store.
Yeah, right.
You know, like, I just think even like Sal's in DP or Webster Avenue Market, like even a smaller.
Yeah, we were,
It's just so hard to sum up.
yeah, we were out in these spaces. There are markets, you know, you go like 2 blocks and there's a little,
Right.
you know, a market that's probably half the size of, or maybe the size of this room.
The deli concept.
Yeah, I mean, it's got just the basics, you know, nothing fancy, but it's you know, and all these apartment units and stuff that are down there, it's their neighborhood market. And I know when I lived in Madison, in a frat house, there was a little market in the basement of an apartment building down the street, and
What was
you get
what was the secret handshake though?
you know, there was like a waiting line. You go at like noon or 6 o'clock or whatever. There was like a waiting line to get into this little market that was literally half the size of this, but it had the basics, you know.
And I like Quick Trips. I
Yeah.
turn it into
Yep.
like little grocery stores,
Yeah.
right? Because they're
New York City delis. Right, like there's not that many grocery stores in all New York City. There's a lot of them. Yeah.
Yes, so we're. With regards to. And. Other than that.
Right.
Right. So those kind of amenities, hopefully we.
Yeah, so hopefully, you know, if we get these developments down here and they see that there's a lot of foot traffic in the area, somebody will bite the bullet. Decide to do that, maybe you get one, you get another, but I'm wondering, is there anything we can do from, you know, from a code perspective to make it easier for that to happen while still keeping it regulated in some fashion?
I don't know. My God, it's a business model problem. Building code.
That's what I think, I think
Yeah.
it's income issues.
Right. Yeah, you're competing with the big ones.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, pretty quick now.
So, yep, so that's my report on this, and then the only other thing is, I actually was appointed as director of the department.
Congratulations.
But I'm keeping the housing authority.
Okay,
Under my approval as director, so
okay.
can't get rid of me. I can't let this go now, right?
Yeah.
Jamie would kill me.
Started this, you gotta follow through, finish it. All right, any questions, any other questions on the director's report? Well, thank you for that update. That's,
And congratulations.
Yeah.
congratulations also. But I mean, that's something that, you know, tells us in sort of a broad sense that we are meeting our mission and we are being successful in what we're doing.
Mhm.
How we know we're supposed to do. You know, awesome. Yeah, thank you. All right, no further questions. We'll move to the occupancy report. Yeah,
That one was not in your packet. I might defer to Ka on this one since she has the piece of paper in front of you on the table. I believe we have 33, 34 vacancies at Mason Manor. But Ka, if you want to add anything.
Nope, I think that's it. I have it printed out in front of everyone. Still waiting for more vacancies. Or before we start construction, but other than that, slowly going up the number. We're at 33 and then I think 2 more just came up, so we'll be at 35 once those 2 go through.
how are the folks at Mason Manor adjusting to all of these impending changes?
They want to know the dates, that's for sure.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
We're looking to close. I want to say our goal is October, is it Friday the 13th? We want to have all of our closing documents ready because we're looking at a November closing. And we really need to close this in November, right? In order to make all the rents work. And it is, Jamie, what, 3 meetings a week? 2 meetings?
Yes, minimally. Yeah, I just got off I touched base with Gorman's relocation specialist, Sonia, and we're gonna add a weekly meeting for them as we are gonna start processing and getting a plan in place. So, but yeah, I think our tenants are adjusting pretty well. We have quite frequent site visits from appraisals to testing to inspections to, and they're just rolling with it. We really have to thank our tenants for being so accommodating, but, and Aaron is well, Scattered Sites and Mason Manor. I know this isn't GBHA Properties 1, but it just seems like every single day we have something going on. So our tenants, we have to thank them. They are very accommodating. And we're just trying to push this project through and get the shovels in the ground and get going.
Okay. Well, maybe when after this is all done, we can throw them a party.
Yeah.
Yes.
We really need to do something for our tenants for sure, because
I mean, you
it's-
do the Christmas one, but maybe when this project gets done and everybody's back settled. And
Yep.
we'll have a party and thank everybody for all their patience and.
absolutely. Yep. Yes.
All right. Anything further on the occupancy report? Any questions? Hearing none, then we move on to the next item, which is the date of our next,
I think we have a direction to the agenda, boss.
yeah, I think so too. I don't think we're gonna meet in on June 15th. Our next date is gotta be sometime in October, I would think.
Let me pull up that calendar here. And we'll be, I suspect we're meeting because of these revenue bonds, because we'll need to do these public notices and what, so it looks like the 19th,
October 19th,
October 19th,
same time, same place.
yes.
All right. Then unless there's anything else, we are ready for adjournment. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? I guess I'll
I'll
second.
second it.
All right, we got everything seconded. All right. Motion to adjourn, all in favor, and a second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Thank you.
Can I get your signature?
Oh, yeah.
Carol, what was